My ex-husband handed me divorce papers when we discovered I was infertile, and my sister offered to start a family with him, and my parents gave in their blessings. 2 years later, ex-husband shows up at my door with a baby, begged me to raise it with him, but now I'm being called ungrateful because I said this? Hey Reddit, so let me start off by giving you guys some context about what happened 2 years back. I, 27 female now, got married to my boyfriend Steve, also 27 now, at 22. We had been together for 4 years at that point already, since we started dating when we were in college and had stayed together even after we graduated. We were totally in love with each other, and within 2 years of marriage, we decided that we were ready to have kids. More than me, he was really excited to start a family, because he came from quite a large one himself. I was equally enthusiastic about being a mother, so it was an easy decision for us to make. The two of us were also in a decent place financially, and we started trying for a baby, but after almost 8 months, we had still not conceived. We started getting concerned about what was going on, so we got ourselves tested, and we realized that I was infertile. I didn't have a hospital environment, and his count was also kind of on the lower side, so to speak, and so we were told that we could keep trying, but there was a good chance that this might not happen. The doctor suggested IVF, and I was up for it, even though we had been warned that it might not work because ultimately it was a matter of chance for us. But Steve was not in agreement with us, since he believed that it would not be natural, and so he wanted to keep trying to get pregnant normally. No matter how hard I tried to convince him that there was nothing unnatural about IVF, he didn't buy it, and so we kept trying for almost 4 more months, but there was still no sign of a pregnancy. After we had found out that I was infertile, things had changed considerably between the two of us, and I could tell that he was struggling to come to terms with the truth. His behavior was very different, and compared to earlier, and most of the time, he would be very distant from me. I tried my best to do everything in my power just so we could go back to being the happy couple that got married, but I could tell that he was really disappointed with the truth. For a while, I did not address the infertility issue, but when I saw that he was very upset about these things, I decided to talk to him and said that we could try surrogacy or even adoption if it really came down to it. By then, we'd been trying for almost a year with no results, so we had to face the harsh truth. However, he told me instantly that he was not fine with surrogacy or adoption because then the kid would not even feel ours. He told me that if we didn't even get to experience the whole pregnancy journey as parents, none of it would feel real or worth it when the baby was ultimately born, and he did not want that. If I'm being honest, I thought that he was being a bit too conservative with his opinions. But we were talking about becoming parents, and I did not want to push it too much. I could already sense that he was very upset and was going through a hard time, much more than even me, since he had been far more excited about becoming a father, and I really wanted to be able to do something for him, but my hands were tied. So for a couple of weeks after we had the discussion about considering other options like adoption or surrogacy, I decided not to say anything about this anymore. We kept trying, but apart from that, he would hardly even talk to me. And I felt terrible about this entire thing, so both of us started spending more time at work than at home with each other. And then one day, he came back home with divorce papers and told me that I needed to sign it because he couldn't be with me anymore. I wish I could say that I was shocked at the time, but I had sensed from his behavior in the past couple of months that because of my infertility, he was finding it difficult to even look at me, let alone be with me, and I knew that at some point, this was going to happen. In spite of the fact that I had known all along, it did not make me feel any better or make the situation any easier to deal with. I didn't even have it in me to fight with him. So after asking him if that was really what he wanted, I decided to sign the papers because he said that he wanted to part ways with me. After that, the divorce proceedings started, but there was not much to negotiate since we lived in a rented house and we just planned on splitting everything that we had bought together. And by the end of the year, we were divorced. But that was just the beginning of everything, since after we got divorced, I thought that my family would never have any contact with him again. But within 5 months of our divorce, I heard from a couple of people that apparently Steve had married my sister Jenny, 30 female now, and photos of their wedding were doing the rounds on social media. I could hardly believe it, but when people started sending me the pictures, I had no option but to accept it. It was shocking for me because my sister and I had never had a bad relationship, and even during the divorce, my family had always been there for me. I found it very confusing, and after I had seen those pictures for myself, I realized that I had been blocked by both Steve and Jenny, which is why I hadn't been able to see the post myself. I tried to call Jenny up on the same day, but she did not answer my phone calls, so I decided to call my parents instead. My dad did not pick up, but my mom did, and she explained to me that apparently, a couple of weeks after my divorce, Jenny had run into Steve at a restaurant, and she had tried to be nice to him and console him because he looked pretty torn up after the divorce. But they had ended up talking through the evening and had hooked up that day. After that, there was apparently no turning back for them, since my mother told me that Jenny had always had a thing for Steve, but had never acted upon it because he was with me. However, now that he was divorced and there was no hope for us ever getting back together, she decided to be with him because on the night that they had hooked up for the first time, he was the one who had initiated it. My mother told me that she was not exactly happy that things turned out this way, but just for my sake, she couldn't take away Jenny's happiness. So when I asked her if she and my dad had known about the affair all along, she said yes. And it hurt because after the divorce, all three of them had pretended to be on my side, but they had known that they were going to have to betray my trust in them eventually, because Jenny and Steve were together after the divorce. Then, I went to ask her if she knew about their plans to get married as well, and she did not deny anything. She said that both she and my father had been approached by Steve and Jenny, and he had asked for their blessing, and my parents had blessed their union, and so they ended up getting married within a week of that, in a small and extremely private ceremony in our backyard, and I hadn't even known about any of it until the photos were posted online. But after my mother told me about all this, she told me that she expected me to understand where Jenny was coming from, because for so long, she had not been particularly lucky when it came to relationships, but here was a guy who really liked her, so my mother wanted me to not say anything and just let her be happy. So I did exactly that. I did not say anything to my mother or anybody after that. I blocked my parents because I wanted nothing to do with them after this, and Jenny had already blocked me herself, so I did not need to worry about that. A week after the photos were posted online, I received one last email from her where she confessed to everything. She told me how they had met and ended up together, which I already knew because of my mother, but she repeated it because she felt like she owed me an explanation. Anyway, after that, she told me certain things that my mother had not mentioned, like how she and Steve had had the discussion about how I was going to feel, and Steve had said that he did not want to hurt me. He really wanted to start a family, and Jenny had wanted the same thing as well, since she was older than him. They also had to consider her age, and so they had to do this so hastily, and that was another reason why they did not have any time to worry about how I would feel. So they just had to do this and rip off the band-aid. She apologized to me and said that it was not her intention to hurt me, but she just wanted to be happy, and Steve made her happy. So she hoped that I would forgive her someday, but I know I won't. Not now and not ever. After I found out about these things, I pretty much cut off my family, apart from the people who condemned them wholeheartedly. That's how it's been for the past 2 years. I have mostly just kept to myself, and I occasionally hang out with a few of my friends and some family members who bother to keep in touch with me. But I have not attended any single event where I knew my family would be present. So I didn't know that a couple of months after they got married, Steve and Jenny got pregnant, and they were expecting a baby. I found out about it recently since they hadn't posted anything about it on their social media and only posted it once the baby was already born. So then my family members flocked to me once again and told me all about it, even though I had never expressed any interest in what they had been up to. This happened about 2 months ago, and it broke my heart all over again. But there was not much that I could do, apart from just try to move on and not think about any of this. Needless to say, the past 2 years have been incredibly difficult for me, so I did not need any reminders of that, and yet, 3 days back, none other than Steve himself showed up at my house. I've been living in the same place since I graduated because it did not seem worth it to move out, but now I might have to consider doing that. Anyway, 3 days back, I was at home because it was the weekend, and around the afternoon, I heard the bell ring and I looked through the window. I saw Steve was standing outside with a baby. I was dumbstruck because I had no idea what he was doing, and I had half a mind to not open the door at all. But then curiosity got the better of me, and then I opened the door and just waited for an explanation. Steve did not apologize to me or anything. He just seemed very panicked and said that he was here to ask me for a huge favor, and he knew that what he had done in the past was very wrong, but now he really desperately needed my help to raise this baby with him. I asked him if that was his daughter with Jenny, and he confirmed it, and that was all I needed to know to shut the door. He begged me not to do that and said that she was not going to be around for much longer, and now he desperately needed me to raise this child with him. He told me that, apparently, a couple of weeks ago, Jenny had been diagnosed with aplastic anemia, and it was unlikely that she was going to recover enough to take care of a baby anytime soon. The pregnancy had weakened her considerably already, and both of them had decided, after a lot of deliberation, that if she was not going to make it in the long run, then it would be better for us to get back together and raise this child as our own. Because Jenny did not want her daughter to grow up without a mother, and she thought that, if not her, I would be the next best person to be a mother to her daughter. So Steve was here to ask me for this huge favor, and he told me that it was unlikely that Jenny was going to make it out of this alive because her condition was pretty bad and it was getting worse by the day. So he really needed my help, and I could see that he was desperate. But I was honestly just disgusted that he and Jenny had even thought that I was going to agree to this under any circumstances. Not only disgusted, but I also felt incredibly angry and disrespected because they had just assumed that I was going to say yes, even after everything that they had put me through. So I stayed quiet for a couple of minutes after he was done telling me everything, and then I opened the door and told him that I was really extremely grateful that they had considered me capable enough to come to me with this offer, but unfortunately, Jenny and I were not kids anymore, and I did not need her hand-me-downs. Then I slammed the door shut as loudly as I possibly could and put on my headphones and blasted loud music so that I wouldn't have to hear him in case he decided to stay outside my door and try to talk to me. When I finally looked outside my window again about half an hour later, I realized that he was gone, and I was relieved because I thought that this nightmare was finally over. But since then, I have received countless messages from my parents who have taken it upon themselves to defend Steve and Jenny. I had blocked them earlier, so they are spamming me from various accounts on social media. And even my ex-in-laws, Steve's parents, are doing the same thing, and I have had to block them as well. The popular opinion seems to be that I am ungrateful, and the hand-me-down comment that I made was completely unnecessary. I could have just said no and let it be. The reason that I may be called ungrateful is because here I am, getting a second chance at having the life that I wanted with Steve, and I don't even have to put any work for it. I just get a baby and him back all in one go, if I just decide to forgive my sister for trying to be happy. But instead of being thankful for it, I'm rejecting it outright. And that just goes to show my arrogance. Honestly, I'm really confused right now, and my emotions are all over the place. So I have to ask, am I the a-hole for refusing to raise my sister's and my ex-husband's daughter with him, just because she's sick? I don't know why, but I'm receiving many questions about why I have decided to stay with Steve, even when I had started figuring out that the news of my infertility had made him incredibly upset, and he was distancing himself from me. I mean, isn't it obvious? I was in love with him, for heaven's sake. Of course I wanted things to work out. I had been with this guy for more than 5 years at that point of time, and I really wanted to make it work. So back then, that was not thinking about myself or what was right for me. I was just thinking about what was right for us, and in doing so, I was foolish enough to let my emotions get the better of me instead of addressing the issue. I thought that if I ignored it for long enough, then it would go away. And yes, it did go away. But along with it, I lost my husband as well. I think any other emotional person in my place would have been the same way. It's much easier to just say that I would have left that person if I was treated that way than to actually do it when it comes down to it. Anyway, the only reason that I stayed with him was because I loved him. And if he had loved me just as much, then he would have made it work with me as well and not abandoned me when things got tough. But that's all in the past. Right now, I'm focused on the situation with what's going on with my family. So please, If we can just focus on that instead of talking about arbitrary things like what I should have done in the past, it's all done now, and I can't go back in time and change it. Hey, so I decided to unblock my parents and told them that if they had bothered me any further, I would be speaking to a lawyer, and that would not be good for them. I sent them a text and they called me up to let me know that the only reason they were bombarding me with messages was because they wanted to speak to me about what I had said. They claimed that the remarks that I had made were incredibly heartless and that I really should rethink my decision about not raising my niece with Steve because Jenny is pretty determined to make this happen, and I really shouldn't say no to a person who is practically on their deathbed. They told me that in spite of all the warnings from her doctors, she's pretty bent on meeting me and has said that she will come to me in person if need be, but she's not going to take no for an answer. They told me that they are scared for her, and that's why they needed to accept this proposition, even if I'm against it. My parents reassured me that I had to say yes just for now. I could go back down after she's gone if I wanted to. I made it very clear that I was not going to lie just because they think that I should, and while we were at that, nobody from this family has the right to tell me what to do. At least not anymore, since nobody seemed to care about my feelings back when I was suffering through all this on my own. They had not even bothered to reach out to me to make sure that I was doing right in the aftermath of Jenny and Steve's wedding, so it was insane for both of them to expect me to play by their rules now. It was sad that Jenny was going through so much, but it was really not my problem, and I was not going to allow them to make it seem like it was. Then I hung up and I blocked them once again, and I'm hoping that this time it will stick because I really don't want to speak to them again. I haven't heard from Steve or Jenny yet, and if they stay out of this, I might not have to speak to any of them ever again. I've even spoken to a couple of friends and have told them that I need to start looking for new apartments since Steve knows where I live, and there is nothing stopping them from showing up at my house again, and I don't think I want to deal with that, especially if Jenny herself decides to show up because she's already sick from what I have heard, and she's determined to make this arrangement before she passes on. So it will be like 10 times harder to say no to her, and I don't want to be put in that position. Hi, so it's been a little over a week since Steve showed up at my house, and I had to turn him down. Since then, my parents have not been in touch with me after our last phone call that I talked about in my previous update. But exactly what I had feared happened today. I had said that I did not want to be put in a position where I would have to come face to face with Jenny because she's sick, and I would find it hard to be hard on her, in spite of everything, but today she showed up at my house. I'm still looking for a place, so I haven't been able to move out yet, and when I saw that she was standing outside, I noticed that she literally had to be held up by Steve, and she was an emaciated version of the woman that I used to know. I could tell that she did not have any fight left in her, and it was a pathetic sight. I know that what she and Steve have done to me was very wrong, but looking at her in that state, I literally did not know what to do. I know people must be judging me as weak right now, but just put yourself in my shoes. This person is somebody who I grew up with, and at one point of time, she used to be my best friend. And now, she couldn't even hold herself up to stand, and I knew that she was dying. It was very hard for me to accept, no matter how much I hated her for what she'd done to me, and I started crying, in spite of myself. So I just told her through the intercom that I wanted her to leave. I did not have it in me to fight with her at the moment. She was both physically and emotionally weak, and I was a mess. So I really did not want to make things worse by having this discussion with her. She told me that she knew that whatever she had put me through was unforgivable, but she just wanted a chance to speak to me. But I just kept saying no, because I really wanted her to leave. I even threatened her with the cops, even though I was not sure whether I would even be able to execute that threat if it came down to it. After about 5 minutes of arguing back and forth, she told me that she was feeling really weak and needed to sit down. So if not for any other reason, then at least I could let her in for that. I thought about it for a while, but I still had to say no, and it was very difficult, but I just couldn't let her in. Not after everything that happened, and especially given the current circumstances. She did not seem mad when I declined even after that. She just sighed and asked Steve to let her sit on the front steps of the porch. After she sat down on the front steps, she had her back to me, and I told her that I really wanted her to leave because it was very obvious to me that she was in terrible shape and this was not good for either of us. However, she finally told me that she was not leaving until I agreed to be a mother to her daughter after she passed away. At that point, we were just talking in circles, so I decided to bring up a very valid point and asked her what would happen if, against all odds, she managed to make it. Let's say that I agreed to this ridiculous proposition. I agreed to get back together with Steve and made a connection with my niece and try to be maternal towards her. Obviously, we were going to develop a strong attachment to each other, but if she ended up making it out of this predicament alive, then what would become of me? She couldn't use me when she wanted to, and then discard me when I was not needed. Finally, there was some silence from her, and after that, she told me that if she managed to make it out of this alive, then I could be my niece's godmother, which was just a very stupid idea because it was obviously not the same as raising her as my own. I told her that she was letting her emotions cloud her judgment, and it was probably the fact that she was sick that was making her consider stupid things. But at the end of the day, I knew that whatever she, Steve, and even our parents were suggesting was something that might seem like a good solution at the moment, but in the long run, it was going to hurt everybody involved. Most of all me, that's for sure. But I told her that after she passed on, there was no way that Steve would be able to live with me, and we would never be able to make it work. We were not able to make it work once, and so much has happened since then. So we would never be able to trust each other as partners, and I asked her if she really wanted to leave her daughter in a household where her supposed parents resented each other more than anything else. Naturally, she did not have an answer for that, and after a couple of minutes of complete silence, Steve told me that he was taking her home because she was feeling even more unwell, and thanked me for my time as formally as he could, and then the two of them left. Since then, I have just been replaying that interaction with him in my head. I really thought that I would be far more angry with her when she finally came to me, but I honestly just felt nothing but pity. It was very hard to have it in you to loathe somebody who is a shell of the person that they used to be. I truly hope that she's able to make it out of this alive, for her daughter's sake more than anything else. And I'm also hoping that they finally leave me alone now, because I let them go today, but the next time that either of them shows up at my door, I'm calling the cops and getting a restraining order. They can't keep putting me through this again and again and expect me to be fine with it. There is a limit to my compassion and empathy as well. Today, I was just caught off guard by the sight of my emaciated and sickly older sister, who always used to be the stronger one between the two of us. But now that I've seen her, and I've come to terms with the truth of the matter, I'm not going to allow myself to be soft and kind anymore, and I have pretty much made up my mind about that. So even if her condition gets worse, her health deteriorates, and they come to me to ask for help, I am still going to say no. I think it's about time that I started putting myself first. In the past, I had never gone out of my way to hurt them, and had just ignored their existence, in spite of what they had done to me, because I did not think it was worth it. However, now, I think I should have just ruined my relationship with him by retaliating, and then maybe I would not be in this place. Anyway, at least I had the satisfaction of knowing that I'm not a bad person. It's not much, but it's something. Hey, so I changed my number and moved into a new house. It's been 2 weeks since I last spoke to Jenny and Steve, and since then, they have not tried to contact me. But I had been considering moving out of my old place anyway, because there were a lot of painful memories attached to that place. And after Steve started visiting me, it became even more difficult for me to remain there. I found a better apartment in a nice neighborhood, closer to my workplace, with more affordable rents, and I moved in here a couple of days back. I also just changed my number for good measure because I did not want anything to do with my family ever again. I've also told a handful of my family members that I'm still in touch with that I don't want to know anything that's going on with them. It was very difficult, but I told them that unless they found out that Jenny had passed away, I would like for them to tell me nothing about her. If she manages to recover, I'll be happy for her, and I will never have to hear from her ever again. And in case she's not that lucky, I will just attend her funeral for a final goodbye. It might make me seem heartless, but the past 2 years have been horrible for me, and I just want to move on with my life now. And that was it for today's story. Thank you very much for listening. Smash that like button for me, and subscribe for more stories. Thanks again, and we'll be seeing you in the next one.